On the Friday before Memorial Day, a sharp knock on the glass door stopped Pamela's needle mid-stitch. She wasn't expecting anyone, especially not a man in army service dress. Behind him, a documentary crew shouldered cameras, their breath misting in the cold. He wasn't here for a uniform repair.
I'm Dr. Marcus Bell, U.S. Army Center of Military History. We're looking for a man named Frank Dawson.
Frank Dawson? He's a customer. Why is the Army looking for Frank?
Because Frank Dawson is the last surviving member of the 439th Engineer Combat Battalion, all black, all but forgotten. And we believe you're the only person who sees him every year.
Pamela's hands, steady on a sewing machine for 3 decades, began to tremble. 6 years earlier, Frank Dawson had walked into this same shop carrying a dress green uniform on a wire hanger, frayed at the cuffs and missing buttons. He didn't say much. He didn't have to.
Sir, this uniform has seen better days. Let me get it right for you.
She'd never charged him a dime, and every Memorial Day morning for 6 straight years he'd walked through that door, wearing the uniform she'd mended, and walked back out without a word about where he'd been. Frank reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of coins. His hand trembled as he counted.
Sir, put that away. You don't owe me anything.
I got enough. I don't take charity.
This uniform saw bigger battles than my sewing machine ever will. Let me honor it.
Her eyes caught the Engineer Battalion patch and the bronze star on the chest. No one wore that for a parade. Before Memorial Day, if you can.
It'll be ready. You have my word.
He left the uniform on the counter. She lifted it like something sacred. For 2 days, she restitched every seam, replaced every lost button, and anchored that patch with more care than any wedding gown. On Memorial Day morning, Frank walked in, put on the uniform, and stood a little straighter. Then he was gone without a word. After the door swung shut, Pamela watched Frank's silhouette shrink against the gray Detroit morning. He didn't look back. The bell's echo faded. She returned to her machine, but the weight of the patch stayed with her. On the table lay the shoulder patch she'd restitched, a castle, a motto, a story she couldn't read.
What happened to you, Frank? What did they make you do?
She folded the uniform and set it aside. A year passed, then another. By year 3, Frank's steps had slowed, but he still arrived with the same wire hanger every May. Pamela's hands worked with the same reverence, even as her son Jamal began questioning the ritual.
Mom, you never charge him. Why?
Because he's already paid more than you'll ever know.
On Memorial morning, he'd button up, straighten his ribbons, and for 1 hour, he was a soldier again. By the 2nd May, Frank's uniform showed raw edges where she'd mended the year before, and the bronze star ribbon had come loose again. She didn't ask about the tear that ran straight through the engineer patch like a scar.
He's still fighting whatever ripped that fabric. I won't let him face it alone.
Jamal, now 14, leaned against the ironing board, watching his mother skip lunch to buy heavier thread.
Mom, the electric bill is red. We can't afford to keep doing this for nothing.
It's not for nothing. It's for everything he gave before you were born.
She turned back to the machine and added a reinforced lining behind the patch so it would hold through another year. In year 4, Frank shuffled in, his cough rattling, and laid the uniform on the counter without a word.
I'll have it ready for you, Mr. Dawson. Same as always.
Jamal didn't ask again. He just handed her a spool of the right green thread and stayed. Year 5 arrived with a cold snap and a deeper tear across the uniform's left shoulder. Frank's hands shook as he placed it on the counter. He didn't meet her eyes. She lifted the fabric and saw the tear had split the patch itself.
This patch. It's an engineer battalion. You were in the engineers?
Omaha. That's all I'll say. The word hung in the air like smoke, and then he was gone, leaving the uniform in her hands.
Omaha. Omaha Beach. Oh, Frank.
That evening, she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, searching for Frank Dawson, 439th Engineer Battalion. The screen gave her nothing. No articles, no citations. Just a void where a unit should have been. She stitched the tear shut with thread that matched the fading green, But the question had already ripped open, and she knew, without a word from him, that he hadn't been silent by accident. Year 6 arrived, and Frank didn't. The week before Memorial Day, his usual Tuesday, passed in silence. Pamela kept the door unlocked until 9 each night, her needle still, her eyes on the glass. On Thursday, he shuffled in, his face drawn, the uniform barely hanging on the wire. He didn't speak.
Sit down, Mr. Dawson. I'll bring the chair.
She worked with more speed than care, her priority to finish before he collapsed, not to make it perfect. From his coat, Frank withdrew a creased black and white photo, young men in muddy fatigues, his own face among them. He held it toward her for 3 seconds, then pulled it back and tucked it away as if burned.
I am not going anywhere, Mr. Dawson. You don't have to hide them from me.
Memorial morning, he buttoned the uniform with shaking fingers, his eyes meeting hers longer than they ever had. He left without a word, and Pamela wept, not from sorrow but from the weight of a promise she'd made to 3 Segros. 3 miles away, in a quiet office of the Veterans Legacy Charity, Miss Evelyn Carter opened the file labeled Dawson, Frank. Inside, 6 years of uniform repair receipts from Wright Tailoring.
Same shop, same uniform, same time every year, and we covered the cost so he'd never have to know.
She dialed a number in Washington. A historian named Dr. Marcus Bell had been asking about any record, any scrap of the 439th Engineer Combat Battalion.
Dr. Bell, we have a name. Frank Dawson. He's been a regular at a Detroit tailor for 6 years. The receipts are all here.
Frank Dawson, confirmed. He was with the 439th. Miss Carter, I need everything you've got. He's the last one.
Marcus Bell had spent 2 years tracking down the 439th, an all-black unit erased from official D-Day narratives. Now he was staring at a street address in Detroit.
Sarah, grab the crew. We fly to Detroit tomorrow. The last survivor of the 439th is still alive, and he's been getting his uniform mended by a woman named Pamela Wright.
Within hours, a documentary crew loaded their gear. The Army needed Frank's testimony before it was too late, and a seamstress held the last thread. Dr. Bell pinned a photo of the 439th to his portfolio. He wouldn't let another day erase what they'd done, and so, on the Friday before Memorial Day, the knock finally came. Pamela opened the door wider, and Dr. Marcus Bell stepped inside, his portfolio already open to a grainy photograph.
43 men cleared a minefield on Omaha Beach while under machine gun fire. The 439th lost 37 of them that morning. Frank Dawson is the only one left.
He laid a second photograph on the counter. Young black soldiers wading through surf, their faces taut. The official report, he said, listed them as support personnel.
He never told me any of this. He just said, Omaha, once and shut down.
He's been carrying their memory alone for 80 years. The Army wants to correct the record, but we need to film his testimony before it's lost forever.
All those years, he was an entire battalion, and I was just fixing a patch.
We have a camera and a historian, but we don't have Frank's trust. You're the one he comes back to.
Dr. Bell placed his military ID beside the photos. His voice dropped to a near whisper.
Miss Wright, I'm begging you, take me to him.
Pamela stared at the photo of those 43 men and saw Frank's silence for what it really was. A grave he dug with every Memorial Day he walked away alone. Pamela told Bell to wait. She walked 6 blocks to Frank's apartment alone, carrying nothing but the photograph he'd almost shown her. Frank opened the door, his brow furrowing. He stepped back, silent, letting her inside.
I need to talk to you, Mr. Dawson, about the men in your picture.
She handed him the photograph of the 439th, the one Bell had given her, and waited. Frank traced the faces in the photograph with a shaking finger, but he didn't speak.
There's a historian outside. He wants to record your story about the 439th, the whole truth.
I made a promise to my brothers. We buried those stories. We forgot on purpose. You need to leave it be.
She saw the wall go back up in his eyes, the same one she'd seen every year. She didn't push. She walked away, the quiet of his apartment pressing against her spine all the way back. When she got back, Belle looked at her face and didn't need her to speak.
We have one shot before he's gone. The 439th will be forgotten forever if he doesn't speak.
He's the last living voice. After him, the story dies.
This isn't about a uniform anymore. It's about 42 men he's been carrying alone.
Then Belle placed a slim folder on the counter, the charity receipts, 6 years of them, all stamped with her shop's name.
The Veterans Legacy Charity paid for every repair. He never knew. You never invoiced, but the fund covered it all.
All those years I thought I was the one giving. But it was never about the money. It doesn't matter who paid. What matters is that he walked out of here feeling whole, and I won't let him vanish without the truth.
She grabbed her sewing kit, the one she'd used for every Memorial Day, and headed for the door.
I am going back. But I am going alone. Just me and my thread.
She left Belle and Sarah in the shop, the receipt folder open on the counter, and walked back toward Frank with a plan that had nothing to do with an interview. She found him in the same armchair, the uniform spread across his lap, his thumb rubbing the torn patch like a wound. She didn't knock. She sat on the footstool, pulled a needle from her kit, and began re-sewing the patch he'd refused to replace.
You keep coming back, even after I shut you out.
My son Jamal is 16. He needs to know that black men like you built this country with their blood, not just the parts they put in books.
Frank's hand went to the small table beside him. The photograph came out again, more worn than before, laid gently beside her thread.
Jackson, Wallace, Thompson, all of them. They was the first to step off that ramp. The water wasn't even red yet. The mines was everywhere, ticking, screaming. We just kept walking, 'cause if we stopped, the whole beach stopped.
You don't have to walk that beach alone anymore. A camera can't hurt you worse than what you've already carried.
If I do this, you gotta stay right beside me. I ain't talking to no camera if you ain't there.
She tied off the thread, smoothed the patch flat, and nodded. He'd just given her what Belle and the whole army couldn't, a reason to speak. The crew rigged a single softbox light in Frank's living room. Sarah framed the shot, and Belle pulled his chair close.
Mr. Dawson, just tell us what you remember. Start wherever you need to.
The ramp dropped and the noise hit like a wall, metal on metal, men screaming. I was 19. Jackson was ahead of me. He stepped on a mine. I remember the sand turning black. They called us support, but we were the first on that beach. The first to dig out the mines. No cover, no hero talk.
Pamela sat just outside the frame, her hand covering his where it rested on the armrest. She didn't let go once.
37 boys. Their mamas never got a body, just a telegram that said, "Killed in action." No mention of the mines. Every Memorial Day, I put on this uniform and I stand for them, 'cause nobody else ever did.
His voice gave out near the end. He sat back, his chest heaving, the silence in the room thicker than the war he'd just described. Sarah killed the camera. Belle closed his notebook. For a long moment, no one spoke. No one needed to. The crew packed their gear in silence. Belle shook Frank's hand with a whispered promise to call in a few days.
You go on now. I need a minute alone with her.
They left. The room settled into a quieter kind of quiet, the hum of the forgotten soft box, the rustle of Frank's hands on the uniform.
Take this. Tear it off. It's yours now.
Her fingers closed over the patch. It was warm from his grip, the threads she'd sewn 1,000 times now holding something she could barely name.
I don't need it no more. I told the story. That's all I had left.
I'll make sure it finds a proper home, Mr. Dawson. Not in a box. Not forgotten.
You already gave it a home, child. 6 years ago when you wouldn't take my money.
They sat in the kind of silence that doesn't need filling. Pamela held the patch like a vow. She left the apartment with the patch clutched to her chest, the wool still holding the shape of his shoulder. She didn't look back. On Memorial Day morning of the 7th year, Frank arrived at the shop already dressed, shaking but standing. He'd pinned the ribbons himself. Pamela only needed to straighten the collar.
I am here for 'em, Pamela. For all 37.
They know you are standing, Mr. Dawson. They've been watching you keep your promise all these years.
He stood for the moment of silence, the only World War II veteran in that crowd whose battalion had cleared Omaha. No one around him knew what the missing patch meant. That evening, she helped him back inside his apartment. He held her wrist before she could turn away.
Thank you for making me stand back up. For 6 years, you lifted a tomb off my shoulders and never asked why.
3 weeks later, Pamela's phone buzzed during supper. Dr. Bell's voice cracked on the other end.
Miss Wright, Frank died in his sleep last night. The medics said it looked peaceful, he just didn't wake up.
He's with Jackson and Wallace now. No more mines, no more silence.
She sat in the shop until midnight, the patch open on her machine. The hanger by the door stayed empty. For the first time in 7 years, May would pass without a uniform to mend. For a year, Sarah Kent lived inside the footage, the softbox light, Frank's cracked voice, the photo of the 439th. She cut the documentary like a tailor, thread by thread, memory by memory. The film, titled The Last Platoon, screened at 4 festivals. At each one, audiences sat in stunned silence when Frank's voice described the sand turning black.
Pamela, we got nominated. Best Historical Documentary. It's happening. Frank's story is going to the Emmys.
2 days later, a gold envelope arrived at Wright Tailoring. Inside, 2 tickets to the ceremony and a note from Sarah. Bring the patch. She didn't buy a gown. She made one. Deep navy, clean lines, and inside the lining over her heart, she stitched Frank's shoulder patch.
Not for a parade, Mr. Dawson. For them.
She hadn't traveled farther than Chicago in 15 years. Now she was packing for Los Angeles, carrying a patch that had seen Omaha Beach and a living room in Detroit.
They want us on the red carpet, Pamela. You'll walk it with me and Dr. Bell. Frank's name will be on the screen tonight.
Then I'll wear him over my heart. He's coming with us.
She hung the gown beside the empty wire hanger Frank had used for 7 years. In the morning, both would leave Detroit. The red carpet was a world away from Detroit. Pamela walked it in the dress she'd made with her own hands, the patch hidden over her heart.
This is it, Pamela. Frank's whole battalion is in this room right now.
When the presenter read The Last Platoon, time stopped. Pamela felt the patch tighten against her ribs. Frank's story was about to break open.
You have to get up there. Frank trusted you with his story. Tell them.
I am a seamstress from Detroit. I mend uniforms for men who've already paid more than any receipt can show. Frank Dawson was 19 when he landed at Omaha. He saw the sand turn black, and he carried 37 brothers out of that sand.
She pressed her hand flat against her heart, where the patch lay beneath the fabric. Her voice broke, but she didn't stop.
He didn't just survive the war. He survived being forgotten.
The room rose before she finished. Not for the speech, for 37 men whose names had never been said aloud in this place, and for the first time, the 439th Engineer Combat Battalion was seen. In the year that followed the Emmy, donations flooded into a small nonprofit in Detroit, enough to purchase an old brick building and transform it into the Detroit World War II Legacy Museum. On the morning of the opening, Pamela stood beside the red ribbon, Jamal at her elbow, a pair of ceremonial scissors in his hand.
I've run this charity for 20 years, and I've never seen a story bring a community together like Frank's. You cut that ribbon, Pamela. This wasn't my story. It was his. I just kept the seams straight.
She squeezed the handles, the ribbon fell, and the crowd surged forward. Veterans, families, schoolchildren, into the first gallery. There, under soft lights, stood Frank's dress green uniform. The patch was missing. It was still with Pamela, but the bronze star gleamed, a plaque read, "Mended annually by Pamela Wright, Wright Tailoring." Across the room, in a smaller case, lay Pamela's sewing kit, the pin cushion, the measuring tape, a spool of the same green thread. A note explained, she refused payment for 6 years.
Mom, they put your thread in a museum. You gonna charge admission?
I'll take a smile. Same as I always did.
She watched a young boy press his palm against the glass in front of Frank's uniform, and she felt the patch over her heart, still there, still warm. When the crowd drifted home, Pamela stayed. The museum that afternoon became a cathedral of quiet. She stopped before Frank's uniform. The sleeve cuff still held the thread she'd sewn in year 4.
I remember that tear. You came in shaking. I was scared I'd lose you that year.
She traced the glass with her fingertip, not touching the wool, just the memory. Then to the smaller case, her sewing kit. The pincushion she'd worn on her wrist for 20 years, now behind glass.
Nobody looks at a seamstress and sees a thread to history. But here it is.
She walked between the two exhibits, uniform and thread, and realized they told the same story.
You didn't need the patch to be remembered, Frank. You just needed someone to keep the thread from breaking.
She touched her chest once, then walked out into the Detroit evening. A keeper of memory, not just a seamstress. The next morning, the bell above the shop door rang the same as it always had, but the air in Wright tailoring felt lighter. Pamela glanced at the photo of Frank she'd taped beside the sewing machine, his quiet smile, his straight back in the restored uniform.
Every stitch I make now feels like a conversation with you, Frank.
Jamal walked in with a bag of groceries and stopped when he saw her smiling at the photo.
You okay, Mom? You've been staring at that picture a lot lately.
I am more than okay. I was just thanking him for showing up 7 years ago.
He knew you'd take care of him. That's why he kept coming back.
They shared a quiet look, and then Jamal handed her the bag. The shop settled into its rhythm, the hum of the machine, the spools of thread, and the knowledge that one small kindness had rewritten history. Outside, Detroit kept moving, but inside, she was still stitching threads between the past and everyone who walked through her door. 3 days later, the bell jingled and a young black soldier in ACU stepped through the door, a uniform draped over his arm. He hesitated near the counter, his eyes landing on the photo of Frank taped to the wall.
What can I do for you, soldier?
He told her he'd visited the museum and heard about the seamstress who never charged a veteran. He held up the uniform, a torn patch near the shoulder, the fabric thin but cared for.
Let me take care of that. Same as I did for Mr. Dawson. No charge.
She carried it to her machine, her hands already threading the needle with the same green she'd used for Frank. The young soldier watched, and for the first time, someone understood what her silence meant. Outside, the city moved on, but inside, another thread was being sewn between the past and the future. Wright Tailoring was still just a shop, but inside it, a battalion kept standing. In the months that followed, the museum filled with footsteps and quiet awe. Children pressed their hands to the glass of Frank's uniform, reading the plaque aloud. Back in her shop, Pamela's needle moved the same steady rhythm it always had. The thread that once held a battalion patch on a dying man's shoulder now held a promise to the living. Outside, Detroit's skyline rose against the dusk, indifferent and beautiful. She was finishing the young soldier's uniform, anchoring the torn patch with the same green thread. The museum gave Frank a home. The shop gave his memory a pulse. The small decal in the window, "We remember the 439th," caught the last sunlight every evening. History had been written by those who held the pens, but sometimes it was rewritten by those who held the needles. And in a small shop on a quiet street, one woman's kindness kept an entire battalion marching. The young soldier would pick up his uniform on Memorial Day morning, just as Frank had every year. She would refuse the money the same way she always did, with a smile and a quiet shake of her head. And in the quiet of her shop, with the hum of the machine and the ghost of a man who once stood tall in green wool, she continued, "Because some debts aren't paid in cash, they're paid in thread." Frank Dawson never became a household name, but his name was etched into a museum, into a documentary, and into the heart of a seamstress who saw a hero when the world didn't. Every year, when the poppies bloom and the flags go up along Woodward Avenue, she will remember, not just the man, but the battalion, not just the war, but the silence that followed for 8 decades. In a small shop in Detroit, history was kept alive one stitch at a time, and it always will be.